Muslim teen bullied by coach, then becomes a world-famous athlete. How will this story turn out? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The gym smelled like sweat and chalk, the air thick with the sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Adil had always loved this place. It had once felt like a second home, a space where he could lose himself in the rhythm of his movements, pushing his body to its limits. But lately it had started to feel different, colder. It wasn't the physical space that had changed. It was Coach Reynolds. Adil felt his stomach tighten as he lined up with the rest of the team, stretching his arms and rolling his shoulders. The murmurs of the other boys filled the room, but he kept his head down, focusing on the routine. He could feel the coach's eyes on him, waiting. The last few weeks had been brutal. The whispers, the extra drills, the constant corrections that only seemed to apply to him. He had told himself it was in his head, that maybe he was overthinking things. Until last week, when coach had sneered at him after practice and muttered under his breath, "You're lucky we even let you on this team." The words had landed like a punch. But Adil hadn't said anything. Not because he didn't want to, but because who would believe him? "Alright, listen up," Coach Reynolds barked, his voice sharp as a whistle. "Today we're pushing harder. I want to see effort, not excuses." His eyes locked onto Adil. Adil clenched his jaw and nodded. They started warm-ups, running drills back and forth across the court. Every time Adil sprinted past Coach Reynolds, he could feel the man's gaze boring into him. The moment practice shifted to sparring, he knew what was coming. "Adil," Coach called out. "You're up." Adil's gut tightened. He had been working hard, pushing himself beyond his limits, but Coach always found a way to single him out. He stepped forward, facing Liam, one of the stronger athletes on the team. The two of them had sparred before, but today something felt different. Liam's smirk told him he knew. The whole team knew. Coach Reynolds had made it obvious. The second the whistle blew, Liam lunged, his movements sharper than usual. He wasn't just testing Adil, he was punishing him. Adil dodged, blocking the first hit, but the second came fast. Liam's elbow slammed into his side, knocking the air from his lungs. Adil stumbled but refused to go down. Coach's voice cut through the tension. "Come on, Adil, is that all you've got?" The team laughed. Adil's hands curled into fists. The next hit came, a hard shove that sent him sprawling to the mat. His palms burned from the impact. Liam towered over him, breathing hard. "Stay down," he muttered. Adil's chest heaved. He could feel the heat of humiliation creeping up his neck. Coach Reynolds stepped closer, looking down at him. "Pathetic?" His voice was low, but everyone heard it. Adil forced himself to stand. His muscles ached, but his pride ached more. The coach shook his head. "You'll never make it at this level. Maybe you should stick to something easier." The words hit harder than any punch. Adil swallowed back the lump in his throat, refusing to let them see the sting. But deep down, the fire had already started. And one day they'd all regret underestimating him. Adil swallowed hard, his body aching as he stood his ground. The sting of the mat was nothing compared to the humiliation burning in his chest. He could hear the other boys chuckling under their breath, exchanging smug glances, knowing that Coach Reynolds had made him the target again. But Adil refused to let them see his pain. He clenched his fists, inhaled sharply, and squared his shoulders. Again he said, his voice steady. Coach raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Adil met his gaze. "I want another round." Liam scoffed, rolling his shoulders like this was some kind of joke. "You sure, man? I just put you on the ground." Adil didn't waver. "Yeah, let's go." Coach Reynolds smirked, but there was something almost amused in his expression. Like he thought this was cute. "Fine," he said, crossing his arms. "Since you're so eager to get beat again, go ahead." The team moved back into a loose circle as Adil and Liam took their stances again. The whistle blew. Liam came at him fast, throwing a hard jab meant to knock him down quick, but this time Adil was ready. He dodged, sidestepping smoothly, forcing Liam to adjust. Liam frowned, lunging again. Adil ducked, slipped left. Liam was stronger, but Adil was faster. Coach Reynolds' expression shifted slightly. He hadn't expected Adil to adapt. Neither had Liam. Frustration flickered in his eyes as he swung again, a sloppy, rushed punch. And that's when Adil saw his opening. He pivoted, countered with precision, and landed a clean strike to Liam's ribs. Liam grunted, stumbling back. The gym went silent. Adil exhaled slowly, keeping his hands up, his stance balanced. Coach's smirk was gone. Liam straightened, rubbing his side, his face burning red. "Lucky shot." Adil shook his head. No. I just learned. Coach stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. All right, that's enough. His voice was tight, controlled, like he didn't want to acknowledge what had just happened. Adil knew exactly what that meant. Coach didn't want to see him win, because that would mean admitting he had been wrong. But Adil wasn't doing this for Coach anymore. As he walked off the mat, ignoring the whispers around him, a realization settled deep in his chest. If they weren't going to respect him, he'd make them watch as he became unstoppable. One day they'd all remember this moment. Because one day he wouldn't just be some kid they underestimated. He'd be a champion. Adil sat on the locker room bench, rolling his sore wrists as the adrenaline slowly faded from his body. His muscles ached, his hands were scraped from the fall, but none of that mattered. Because for the first time he had fought back. Not just against Liam. Not just against Coach Reynolds. But against the doubt they had planted in him for so long. He had proved, to them, to himself, that he wasn't weak. But he also knew this wasn't over. The locker room door swung open and Liam walked in, still rubbing his ribs. He didn't say anything at first, just threw his bag into the locker and sat down across from Adil. Adil expected some kind of insult. A sneer, a sarcastic remark, something. But Liam just let out a breath and muttered, "Where'd you learn to move like that?" Adil blinked. "What?" Liam looked up, his expression unreadable. "That counter. You've never fought like that before." Adil hesitated. I watch a lot of professionals. I study their movements." Liam nodded slowly. "Huh." He seemed to consider something, then smirked. "Coach is gonna be pissed." Adil didn't reply. He already knew that. But what Liam said next caught him off guard. "You should train more. You've got potential." Adil frowned, unsure if this was some kind of setup. "What?" Liam shrugged. "I mean, yeah, I still kicked your ass, but you've got something. If you trained harder, you'd actually be dangerous." Adil wasn't sure if this was an insult or a compliment. Liam grabbed his bag and stood up. "Anyway, see you tomorrow, man." He walked off like it was nothing, leaving Adil sitting there, confused. But that single conversation lit something inside him. Potential. Liam had seen it. Adil had felt it. Maybe he wasn't just proving something to them. Maybe this was just the beginning. The moment he walked out of that locker room, he made himself a promise. He wasn't just going to train harder. He was going to become the best. And the next time he stepped onto that mat, there would be no doubt. Not from Liam. Not from Coach. Not from anyone. Adil spent the next few weeks in a relentless cycle of training. Before school, after practice, late into the night. Every time he felt exhausted, every time his body begged him to stop, he replayed Coach Reynolds' words in his head. "You'll never make it at this level. You're lucky we even let you on this team." The sting of humiliation had burned deep, but now, it fueled him. He studied professional fighters, watching hours of footage. He memorized their movements, the way they dodged, the way they struck, the way they turned their weaknesses into strengths. And then he drilled. Again. And again. Until his footwork became sharper. Until his reactions became faster. Until his body stopped hesitating and started responding on instinct. The gym lights flickered late at night as he stayed after practice, his sweat soaking into the mat long after the rest of the team had gone home. One night as he was finishing up, Liam walked in. Adil paused, watching as his teammate dropped his bag on the bench and stretched. "Dude," Liam said, shaking his head. "You're still here?" Adil wiped sweat from his brow. "Yeah." Liam smirked. "You trying to kill yourself or something?" Adil didn't smile. "I'm trying to get better." Liam studied him for a moment, then leaned against the wall. "You know, I told Coach he was wrong about you." Adil frowned. "What?" Liam shrugged. "You've been proving it every day. He doesn't say it, but he knows you're getting better." Adil felt his stomach twist. That didn't mean Coach respected him. Liam sighed. "Look, man, I don't know what's up between you and him, but if you keep training like this, you're gonna be a serious problem in competitions." Adil clenched his fists. "That's the plan." Liam grinned. "All right then. Let's see if you can keep up." He dropped into a fighting stance. Adil smirked. This time he wasn't afraid. They sparred for nearly an hour, trading blows, testing speed, endurance, skill. Liam was still stronger, but Adil was faster. More precise. More controlled. And when Adil landed a clean shot to Liam's ribs, knocking him off balance, he saw it. Recognition. Liam chuckled as he caught his breath. "Yeah, you're getting dangerous." Adil didn't respond. He didn't need to, because this was just the beginning. He was getting stronger, faster, better. And one day he wouldn't just be part of the team. He'd be the one they all feared. Adil's training became an obsession. Every hour outside of school and practice was dedicated to sharpening his skills. The more he improved, the more he saw the cracks in Coach Reynolds' authority. Before, the man had dismissed him, mocked him, treated him like an outsider who didn't belong. But now Coach was paying attention. He didn't praise Adil, not once. But he couldn't ignore him anymore. During practice, when Adil landed precise strikes or outmaneuvered his opponents, Coach's expression would tighten. His jaw would clench. He hated it. Adil wasn't just surviving on the team. He was excelling. And Coach Reynolds? He couldn't stand it. One evening after practice, Adil stayed behind, pushing himself through extra drills. His muscles screamed for rest, but he refused to stop. Then he heard footsteps. He turned to see Coach Reynolds watching him. For a moment there was silence. Then, "You think all this extra training is going to make you a champion?" Adil stiffened but didn't look away. "Yeah." Coach let out a cold chuckle. "You don't have what it takes. You can practice all night, but you're still not cut out for this." Adil's fingers curled into fists. He had expected this. Coach couldn't break him physically, so now he was trying to break him mentally. But Adil wasn't the same kid who had been humiliated weeks ago. He straightened. "We'll see." Coach scoffed, shaking his head. "You think you're gonna prove me wrong?" Adil met his gaze without hesitation. "Yeah. And when I do, I want you to remember this conversation." Coach's smirk faded. For a moment, it almost looked like he was nervous. Without another word, Adil grabbed his bag and walked past him. He didn't need Coach Reynolds' approval. He needed victory. And he was going to get it. Because one day soon, the whole world would know his name. And Coach Reynolds? He'd be nothing more than a footnote in Adil's story. The weeks passed, and Adil's transformation was undeniable. His footwork was sharper, his reflexes quicker, his strikes more precise. Every time he sparred, the gap between him and the top competitors on the team narrowed. And Coach Reynolds hated it. Adil could see it in the man's clenched jaw, the way he refused to acknowledge his progress, the way he still tried to single him out with extra drills and harsh words. But now it didn't break him. It fueled him. One evening, after an intense training session, Liam walked up to him, shaking his head with a smirk. "Dude, you're on fire lately." Adil exhaled, rolling out his wrists. "Just putting in the work." Liam studied him for a moment. "No, seriously, it's insane. You went from barely keeping up to giving us all a run for our money." Adil didn't respond. He didn't train for compliments. He trained for the moment he would prove them all wrong. Liam crossed his arms. "You ready for the tournament?" Adil's heart pounded. The regional tournament was in 2 weeks, the biggest event of the season. It was where scouts watched for future champions, where reputations were built or shattered, where Adil would finally show everyone, including Coach Reynolds, that he belonged. He nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." Liam grinned. "Good. Because I think Coach is hoping you'll choke." Adil knew that. Coach Reynolds had avoided putting him in any real matches, always making excuses, always sidelining him during scrimmages. But this time, Coach didn't have a choice. Adil had earned his spot, and he was about to show the world exactly what he was capable of. The tournament, the gym was packed. The sound of sneakers squeaking, gloves smacking, and crowds cheering filled the air. This was it. Adil stood in the warm-up area, wrapping his hands, his mind laser-focused. Then he heard the voice that made his blood run cold. "You shouldn't even be here." He turned to see Coach Reynolds standing there, arms crossed. Adil forced himself to stay calm. "I earned this." Coach scoffed. "You think one good fight means you belong?" He shook his head. "When you step into that ring, you're going to fall apart." Adil clenched his fists. The old him might have believed that. But not anymore. Not after every late-night training session. Not after every punch, every drill, every time he picked himself up off the mat. He met Coach's gaze and smirked. "Watch me." And with that, he stepped into the ring. The crowd hummed with energy as Adil stepped onto the mat. The bright overhead lights bore down on him, but he hardly noticed. This moment had been years in the making. His opponent was Nick Wallace, one of the top-ranked competitors in the region. A powerhouse of a fighter, fast, aggressive, and confident. But Adil wasn't intimidated. Nick smirked as he bounced on his feet. "Didn't expect to see you here, man." Adil adjusted his gloves, keeping his expression neutral. "Yeah, you should start expecting it." The referee called them to the center, and Adil stole a quick glance at the sidelines. Coach Reynolds stood there, arms crossed, watching intently, waiting for him to fail. Adil turned back to Nick, jaw tight. "Not today." The referee signaled. The match began. Nick came out fast just like Adil had expected. A powerful right jab, Adil dodged. A left hook, Adil slipped past it. Nick threw another punch, expecting Adil to back off, but instead, Adil countered. A sharp, clean strike to the ribs. Nick stumbled, surprise flashing across his face. Coach Reynolds' expression shifted just slightly. Adil pressed forward, staying in control. His footwork was sharp, his movements precise. Every time Nick tried to overpower him, Adil used his speed to stay ahead. The first round ended, and for the first time, Adil saw doubt in Nick's eyes. Back in his corner, Adil wiped sweat from his forehead, breathing evenly. He could hear the whispers in the crowd. "Who is this kid? Where did he come from?" Adil smiled. They were finally seeing him. The second round started, and Nick came at him harder. But Adil was ready. Every punch Nick threw, Adil saw it before it landed. He moved with precision, countering at just the right moments. And then, his opening came. Nick's stance shifted just slightly. Adil exploded forward. A lightning-fast combination. A right to the jaw. A left to the ribs. Nick stumbled. The referee stepped in, it was over. Adil stood there, chest heaving as the referee raised his arm. Winner, Adil Khan. The crowd erupted. Adil turned to the sidelines. Coach Reynolds was gone. Typical. He had just watched Adil prove him wrong and he couldn't stand it. But Adil didn't care. He hadn't done this for Coach. He had done it for himself. For every time he had been doubted. For every time someone had told him he didn't belong. And as he stepped off the mat, greeted by stunned teammates, murmurs of respect, and the realization that he had just made a name for himself, Adil knew this was just the beginning. One day he wouldn't just be winning regional tournaments. He'd be winning world titles. And Coach Reynolds? He'd be just another forgotten name in Adil's story. The arena was still buzzing as Adil stepped off the mat. He had done it. But the victory wasn't just about winning a match. It was about proving everyone wrong. His teammates, ***, the same ones who used to whisper behind his back, ***, now looked at him differently. Some nodded in respect. A few even patted his shoulder as he walked past. Liam caught up to him, grinning. "Dude, that was insane." Adil exhaled, his heart still racing. "Thanks." Liam shook his head in disbelief. "Nah, I mean it. That wasn't just a win, that was a statement." He laughed. "I think Nick's still trying to figure out what happened." Adil allowed himself a small smile. But he wasn't thinking about Nick. He was thinking about Coach Reynolds. He scanned the arena, searching the sidelines, but the coach was nowhere to be seen. Coward. He had spent months tearing Adil down, telling him he didn't belong. And the moment Adil proved him wrong, he disappeared. Typical. Liam nudged him. "You coming to celebrate?" Adil hesitated. There was one thing he needed to do first. He shook his head. "I'll catch up." Liam shrugged. "All right, champ." Then grinning, he added, "See you at Nationals?" Adil's chest tightened. Nationals. The biggest stage yet. And now, he had a shot. He gave Liam a nod. "Yeah, see you there." Then he turned and walked toward the locker room. He found Coach Reynolds near the exit, alone. Adil stopped a few feet away. "Leaving so soon?" Coach turned, his expression unreadable. "What do you want?" Adil crossed his arms. "Nothing." He tilted his head. "Just thought you'd have something to say." Coach scoffed. "You got lucky." Adil smirked. "Luck?" He took a step forward. "No, Coach. I worked for this. Every late-night training session, every extra drill, every time you tried to break me, I used it." Coach's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Adil nodded slowly. "You don't have to say it. I know I proved you wrong." Silence. Then Coach Reynolds did what he did best. He walked away. And Adil? He didn't need his validation anymore. He had won. And this was just the beginning. Adil watched Coach Reynolds walk away, his footsteps heavy with defeat. But unlike before, Adil didn't feel the need to chase his approval. For so long he had thought that earning respect meant proving himself to people like Reynolds. But now he realized the truth. Respect wasn't given by those who doubted him. It was earned through the work he put in. And he had earned every second of this moment. Stepping outside, the night air was crisp, carrying the faint cheers of the tournament still echoing inside. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Messages of congratulations flooded his inbox. He ignored them for now. Because in that moment he wasn't thinking about the fight he had just won. He was thinking about the one still ahead. Nationals. The real test. He had come this far, but now the stakes were even higher. Liam's words replayed in his head. See you at Nationals? Adil smirked. Yeah, he'd be there. But not just to compete. To win. Because this wasn't just about proving Coach Reynolds wrong anymore. It was about proving himself right. The days following Adil's victory at regionals were unlike anything he had ever experienced. His name was everywhere. Social media posts, local news articles, even whispers around school, people were talking about him. The underdog who shut down the doubters. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. But Adil didn't let it distract him. He had a new goal now, Nationals. And if regionals had been tough, Nationals would be brutal. Every opponent there would be hungry, skilled, and relentless. There would be no easy wins. No lucky breaks. If he wanted to take the next step, he had to evolve. So while others celebrated, Adil trained harder than ever. He woke up before dawn, running drills before school. Shadowboxing in empty hallways, practicing footwork during lunch breaks. And when practice ended, he stayed behind. Every single night. Liam noticed. Dude, I thought you were intense before, but this? Liam leaned against the gym wall, watching Adil run the same drill for the 20th time that night. This is next level? Adil didn't stop moving. Nationals is different. Liam crossed his arms. Yeah, but don't burn yourself out before you get there. Adil finally paused, catching his breath. I have to be ready. Liam studied him for a moment, then nodded. You're already proving everyone wrong, man? He grinned. Now go prove you're the best. Adil smirked. That was the plan. As the days passed, his speed increased. His precision sharpened. His endurance pushed past every limit. And with every drop of sweat, he saw it. The future he was fighting for. Not just a tournament win. Not just respect. A legacy. Because one day he wouldn't just be another name on the roster. He'd be the one they all feared. And when he stepped onto the mat at Nationals, the world would finally see what he had known all along. He was meant for this. The weeks leading up to Nationals blurred together. Every day was a cycle of training, exhaustion, and pushing past his limits. Adil barely spoke to anyone outside the gym. His world had narrowed to footwork, endurance, precision, and most importantly, control. Control over his body. Control over his emotions. Control over every move he made in the ring. Because at Nationals there would be no second chances. The pressure was immense, but Adil thrived in it. For the first time in his life, he felt unstoppable. Liam, who had been watching his progress closely, finally shook his head one night after practice. You're a machine, man. Adil exhaled, sweat dripping down his face. Gotta be. Liam smirked. You realize that even Coach Reynolds has stopped trying to mess with you? Adil did realize it. For months, the man had done everything he could to tear him down. But now, Coach was silent. Because he had no power over Adil anymore. The results spoke for themselves. And at Nationals, the whole country would see it. The big day. The air in the arena was electric. The sheer magnitude of Nationals was unlike anything Adil had ever seen. Dozens of fighters, hundreds of spectators, coaches barking orders, cameras flashing. This was the big leagues. And Adil was here to make his mark. His name was called for his first match. He stepped onto the mat, feeling the weight of every moment that had led him here. His opponent was taller, stronger, more experienced. But Adil didn't care. He had fought too hard, trained too long, suffered too much to let this moment slip away. The referee's whistle blew, and Adil exploded forward. The fight was a war, fast, brutal, unforgiving. But Adil's training had turned him into something dangerous. Every time his opponent tried to overwhelm him, Adil adapted. Every hit he took, he used it. Every second that passed, he controlled the fight more and more. And when the final strike landed, when his opponent fell back, unable to continue, the arena roared. Adil stood there, chest heaving, hands clenched. The referee raised his arm. Winner, Adil Khan. He had done it. He had arrived. And this was just the beginning. Adil barely heard the roar of the crowd. His pulse was still pounding, his chest rising and falling with every breath. He had won. Not just a match, he had proven himself on the biggest stage yet. As he stepped off the mat, he caught sight of Coach Reynolds standing in the back. Arms crossed, expression blank. But Adil knew what that meant. The coach had nothing left to say. Liam rushed over, grinning. Dude, you just took down a top-ranked fighter? Adil nodded, still catching his breath. Yeah. Liam nudged him. No celebration? Adil smirked. Not yet. Because this wasn't over. Nationals weren't won with one fight. This was just the beginning. The next rounds, the competition only got harder. Each fight tested his endurance, his discipline, his mental toughness. Some opponents tried to overpower him. He dodged, countered, outmaneuvered them. Others tried to break his patience. He stayed composed, waited for his openings, and struck with precision. Every match pushed him to the edge, and every match he came out stronger. Liam watched in disbelief. "Man, you're a different fighter than when we started." Adil exhaled. "That's the point." By the time the semifinals came, he wasn't just competing anymore. He was dominating. And the people in the stands? The ones who had never looked at him before? They knew his name now. The final match. The arena was packed. This was it, the national championship match. His opponent was Elijah Vega, the reigning champion. Fast, powerful, calculated. A fighter built to win. Adil stood across from him, rolling out his shoulders. This was the moment. Everything he had endured. Everything he had trained for. The whistle blew. Elijah came out aggressive, pushing forward fast, testing Adil's defense. Adil didn't flinch. He had studied fighters like Elijah for months. He knew how to counter every move. He ducked, dodged, slipped past strikes, his footwork keeping him one step ahead. Elijah grew frustrated, started swinging harder. And that's when Adil took control. A clean counterstrike. Then another. And another. Elijah stumbled back. The crowd gasped. Adil pressed forward, his mind sharp, every movement instinctive now. Then, the final hit. A perfect strike. Elijah staggered. His body wavered. The referee stepped in. Adil stepped back, his breath heavy. And then, the referee raised his hand. Winner, Adil Khan. The stadium exploded. He had done it. He had won nationals. Liam ran up, practically tackling him. "Bro, you're a freaking champion." Adil barely processed it. His entire body was buzzing. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Coach Reynolds. The man was watching, his face unreadable. But Adil knew. He had proven him wrong. Not with words. Not with arguments. With victory. Adil inhaled deeply, soaking it all in. Because this wasn't just about today. This was about everything it took to get here. And now the world knew exactly who he was. Adil Khan. National champion. And soon, world champion. The celebration was deafening, but Adil felt like he was in a different world. The crowd, the flashing cameras, the announcer declaring him the national champion, it all felt distant. Because for the first time in his life he had no doubt. No doubt that he belonged here. No doubt that he had earned this. Liam grabbed his shoulders, shaking him with excitement. "You freaking did it, man. You're the best in the country." Adil exhaled, finally allowing himself to smile. But before he could respond, a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Well, looks like you actually pulled it off." Adil turned, and there he was. Coach Reynolds. The man stood at the edge of the mat, arms crossed, his usual smugness replaced by something else. Adil didn't speak. He didn't have to. Because everything had already been said in the ring. Coach Reynolds exhaled sharply. "I didn't think you had it in you." Adil raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, you made that pretty clear." For a second, something flickered in the coach's eyes. A crack in the arrogance. Maybe even regret. He looked away. "You proved me wrong." Adil studied him. It wasn't an apology. It would never be an apology. But it didn't matter anymore. He didn't need Reynolds' approval. Didn't need his validation. Because now, Adil Khan had his own name. His own legacy. Coach Reynolds was nothing more than a stepping stone. Adil nodded once. "Yeah, I did." Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Because this victory? It wasn't about Reynolds. It was about every hour Adil had trained. Every moment he had pushed himself beyond his limits. Every time he had been knocked down and gotten back up stronger. This was just the beginning. Next stop, the international stage. And when the world saw him fight, they wouldn't just know his name. They'd never forget it. The arena buzzed with excitement, the energy still electric from Adil's victory. But for him it was just another step forward. As he walked through the tunnel toward the locker rooms, his phone vibrated. He pulled it out, expecting messages from friends or family, but what he saw stopped him in his tracks. A notification. An email. From the International Fighting Federation. His breath caught. He tapped it open, his hands almost shaking. Subject. Official invitation, World Championship Trials. Dear Adil Khan, congratulations on your outstanding victory at Nationals. We are pleased to invite you to participate in the upcoming World Championship Trials, where the best fighters from across the country will compete for a place on the international stage. Your performance has not gone unnoticed, and we believe you have the potential to represent at the highest level. Details to follow. Welcome to the next level. Sincerely, International Fighting Federation. Adil just stood there staring at the screen. His heart pounded. World Championship Trials. This wasn't just another tournament. This was the highest level. The best of the best. Only one fighter from his weight class would qualify. Liam jogged up beside him, still riding the high of the victory. "Dude, what are you?" He stopped when he saw Adil's face. "What's up?" Wordlessly, Adil turned the phone so Liam could see. Liam's eyes widened. "No way." Adil nodded. Liam grabbed the phone, rereading the message, then burst out laughing. "Bro, you're going to the trials?" Adil exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah." Liam grinned. "This is it, man. This is your shot." Adil stared at the email again, feeling the weight of what it meant. Nationals had been the goal. But now the stakes were even higher. The opponents would be faster, stronger, smarter, and he had everything to prove. Adil closed the email and tucked his phone into his pocket. He had made it this far, and he wasn't stopping now. He turned to Liam, a fire in his eyes. Time to get back to work. The moment Adil walked out of the arena, he knew his life had changed. Winning nationals had been a dream, but this was something bigger. The World Championship Trials. The chance to compete against the best. The opportunity to go pro, to step onto the international stage, to make history. But with the opportunity came pressure. And Adil thrived under pressure. The grind begins. From that day forward, his training became relentless. Before sunrise, he ran. Building endurance, pushing past every mental limit. Midday he sparred. Faster, sharper opponents. Fighters who had already competed internationally. Men who weren't just strong, they were elite. Late at night he studied. Watching tapes of past world championship winners. Analyzing their movements, their tactics, their weaknesses. Nothing was left to chance. Because this wasn't about proving Coach Reynolds wrong anymore. This was about proving that he belonged. Liam trained with him whenever he could, but even he struggled to keep up. One night after a brutal sparring session, he slumped against the gym wall, breathing hard. "Dude, when do you sleep?" Adil, still bouncing on his feet, smirked. "I'll sleep after I win." Liam let out a tired laugh. "You're insane." Adil shrugged. Maybe he was. But to be the best? He had to be. The invitation arrives. Weeks passed. Training became second nature. And then, it happened. A letter arrived. The official invitation to the World Championship Trials. Liam snatched it from Adil's hands before he could even react. "Bro, this is it. This is the real deal." Adil nodded, his heart pounding as he unfolded the letter. "Welcome to the World Championship Trials. You are invited to compete for a spot on the national team. The best from across the country will fight for limited placements. Only the strongest will advance. Your journey starts now." Adil tightened his grip on the paper. This was what he had been fighting for. This was his chance to stand among the best. To show the world that a kid they had once laughed at was now unstoppable. Liam grinned. "So, when do we leave?" Adil folded the letter carefully and exhaled. "Tomorrow?" Because he wasn't waiting. Not anymore. The next chapter of his story was about to begin. The journey to the trials. The next morning, Adil stood at the airport, bag packed, mind focused. This wasn't just another tournament. This was everything. Liam stood beside him, scrolling through his phone. "Dude, have you seen the list of competitors?" He whistled. "These guys are monsters. Some of them already have pro contracts lined up." Adil nodded, unfazed. He didn't care who they were. Because they didn't know him yet. But soon, they would. Arrival at the training camp. The World Championship Trials were held in an elite training facility, a place designed to break even the toughest fighters. When Adil walked into the gym, he could feel the tension immediately. Everyone here was hungry. Some fighters were already in the ring, sparring hard. Others were stretching, eyes scanning the room, sizing up the competition. And then he saw him. Malik Rami. Reigning world champion. A fighter with years of experience, a name known in every gym across the country. Adil had studied him. He knew every one of Malik's fights, every weakness, every strength. And now they were in the same room. Malik's eyes flicked over Adil before turning away, uninterested. Adil smirked. "Good. Let him underestimate me." Liam nudged him. "That's Malik freaking Rami, man." Adil rolled his shoulders. "I know." Liam shook his head. "You're not nervous?" Adil's smirk widened. "No. Because Malik Rami was just another fighter. And Adil Khan? He was here to take his place. The first test. The head coach, A former world champion himself. Called the fighters into a circle. His gaze was sharp, his voice commanding. Welcome to the trials. Some of you have fought on big stages. Some of you think you're the next great champion. He paused. Most of you won't make it past the first round. The fighters exchanged glances, tension thick in the air. Adil stayed still. He had no doubts. The coach continued, we don't waste time here. First test, sparring. You get in the ring. You show us what you're made of. If you can't handle it, you're out. The fighters nodded. Then the coach's eyes landed on Adil. You're up first. Adil barely reacted. He stepped forward. Liam muttered under his breath, they want to see if you belong here. Adil cracked his knuckles. Then let's show them. He climbed into the ring, heart steady, mind sharp. Across from him, his opponent stepped up, a fighter from one of the biggest training academies in the country. Bigger, stronger, more experienced. None of it mattered. The bell rang. And Adil? Adil was ready, proving himself. The bell rang and the gym fell silent. Adil's opponent moved first, fast, powerful, calculated. A fighter trained in the best academies, conditioned for competition. But Adil had trained for this exact moment. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Instead, he studied every movement. The first punch came, a heavy right hook meant to end the fight fast. Adil slipped past it. His opponent followed with a sharp jab. Adil dodged again. The coach leaned forward, watching. Adil could feel every eye in the gym locked on him. The tension was thick. Who was this kid? Did he belong here? Then his opponent got impatient. A second of frustration. A shift in balance. Adil saw his opening. He struck, clean, precise. A shot straight to the ribs, knocking the air out of his opponent. The fighter stumbled back, eyes wide. Adil pressed forward, his attacks controlled, relentless. Another hit. Then another. And before his opponent could recover, the fight was over. The gym was silent. The head coach nodded slowly. Not bad. Adil stepped back, barely breathing hard. Liam let out a low whistle. Damn. Adil didn't smile. Didn't celebrate. This was just the beginning. The road ahead. The head coach walked up to him, studying him carefully. You've got talent. But this is just one fight. The real test starts now. Adil met his gaze. I know. The coach nodded, then turned to the rest of the fighters. Welcome to the World Championship trials. You've seen what it takes. Now let's see who survives. Adil exhaled, his fists tightening. He had come here to prove himself. To show the world that he wasn't just another fighter. And now the world was watching. Because Adil Khan wasn't just here to compete. He was here to win.